speaking beyond our borders, on land, on the seas, and in the air. This is the Chief Koti Show.
Hello folks, welcome back to the Chief Koti Show. I've got another explosive edition this time around. I've got a brother of mine, a good friend of mine, who has helped me quite a bit in terms of motivation, in terms of sharing nuggets, and even dreaming on my behalf, yeah? George Billionaire is the name. My brother, what's up?
Chief Koti.
Good to say.
Always a pleasure to have a conversation.
The guy who makes the weather behave.
That's right. You know, every time you come around me, you know, it's nice to be known by what you do.
Yeah.
And that's a sum total result of, you know, consistency and doing something over and over again. But Chief, it's always a pleasure to meet up with you and have a conversation with you.
Yeah.
I love this that you're doing.
Thank you.
You know, we always share nuggets. We always, you know, exchange contacts, you know, wisdom. But now I love what you're doing with the show, because this is now not just about you and me. This is now broadcasting it out to the whole world.
Sharing it with many.
Because one thing about Chief Koti that people don't know, there's nobody that Chief Koti will call who will not come. Because he's a man. He's a man who's rich in relationships across board, all colors. There's not a lot of people who are well networked relationship-wise like you.
You speak well of me, man. I feel good about
myself.
No,
that's you. And I mean, your work speaks for itself.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. You're a multi-diverse individual. You know, when you hold the microphone, whether you're on TV, radio, you know, seasoned, cool, presidential functions, embassies, you know, you can. So, you know, it's always good to have a friend like that because, you know, I mean, personally with Pro Air, we know who to call when we need somebody to, you know, do that thing for us.
They did our aircons for our cars. Now we need them to come to the studio, and I'm sure by the end of the show, I would have convinced George they will do the aircon here. I can tell you that. So George, you are a guy who's out there also. You're not shy to sell yourself, which is great. I love that about you. And you're one of the, you know, the crop of entrepreneurs that I've seen starting actually. And right now you're at the crest. And I think the sky is the limit. In fact, there's no limit really. As Elon Musk would say, you can even go to Mars. Yeah. You know?
You can even go to Pluto.
There you go. Yeah. We have to see whether you can make the weather behave there.
Yeah, true.
So I want to know who is George, in case people don't understand who George Billionaire is. I know there are many youngsters who are watching right now, and there are many also peers, you know, who are watching, and they want to know your story. They want to know who you are. So perhaps you can just start by telling us who is George.
Wow. Okay. So George Billionaire Madangwa is the last born of a family of 4. Born and raised in a high-density suburb of Glenora.
You're the last born?
I'm the last born, yes.
I'm the last born too.
Yeah, so there's something about last borns where when it comes to you know, doing things. Yeah. We have a Joseph in the Bible who was the last born. But George is the last born of a family of 4. Grew up in Glenora A. When we're Glenora, they just, you know, it's a low-density, high-density suburb. You know, we didn't have
kind of private.
So I came from there, and I was blessed to be taken to a private school by my father, Nicodemus, and Teresa Munengwa, my dad and mom. They invested highly in education for us, all 4 of our siblings, including myself. And I went to St. Michael's, Hartman House, St. George's College, where I went all the way up to Form 4. So George had a dream back then to become a renowned soccer player. George aitamba bora kumaraini ku Glenora. Paizoenda ku private school. You know, there was, because I had so much exposure, nekutamba weshe kumaraini. You know, I was far more competent than my guys up there. Because every time you get dropped off at home, you'd play soccer. You know, so I failed my O levels because of my love of sport.
That story is so identical.
Wow, really?
Yeah, no, I failed this, but
Yeah. No, and you know,
I had to get it right the second time.
and you know, it's amazing with failing what it does. So failing my O levels took me away from my peers, which made me realize that I'm alone now. Because when you're, you know, going along with your stream of friends, and at St. George's, I was the only one in the stream who stayed in a high-density suburb. So imagine, I could go to my friends' houses for sleepovers, but I couldn't return the favor because it's a two-bedroom. There's a bedroom for dad and mom. The sisters would sleep in the other. You know, me and my brother would sleep in the lounge. So I could... No, my dad wasn't like that. You know,
my mom, you would never touch the sofa. What?
Yeah, no, but that was a bed for me. But no, so growing up with that environment, I would go to my friend's house and be exposed. And see, wow, this is nice, you know. But you'd go back to Glenora, and I failed because of soccer. I was approached by, when we played soccer versus Prince Edward, they gave me a full scholarship when we played Saints versus PE. And then they had said,
did that make sense though?
No, it did, for my dad, who said, listen, I don't have to pay fees anymore.
I
Please.
see.
But what my dad did, he said, you're not going to go to Prince Edward without passing your O-levels.
Okay.
So I then repeated my O-levels in town at a technical college where there was no sport, which also kind of exposed me to the Harare life.
So I could have combined every day to college.
And then ndakufura paZimex. PaZimex, I'll speak about the University of Zimex more a bit later on.
So I graduated.
I'll get into that later, but I got exposed to Zimex more. I would get some of my fees for the college, and I would use some of that kumbo spin my deals. And then when they say, hey, you need to, then I would, you know, hustle and, you know, pay the fees off. But, you know, I then passed my O-levels, went to Prince Edward. An amazing school back in the day.
Still on scholarship? Or?
On scholarship.
Oh, okay.
So I did that supplementing my O-levels. I mean, my father spoke to them and said, listen, he can only come after. Then I went to Prince Edward, a very different environment. There I was the only guy from Glenora at St. George's College. Brilliant school, brilliant upbringing, etiquette, everything. But when I went to Prince Edward, it was a totally different ballgame, where you met guys from everywhere. These were guys.
United Nations.
Yes, and you know what? I kind of felt more at home, and because I could relate with these guys, I wouldn't feel. You know, at Saints, when I was dropped off, I was insulted by, you know, my dad had a car written City of Harare, this, that, and you know, one right, moto bini yawe, and you know, it wasn't a very good-looking car, and I would even ask my dad to leave me at the gate sometimes. You know.
Oh, so is that why my son does that these days?
Yeah,
Dad, you know what? It's it's cool, man.
Yeah, just I woke up.
The gate, I woke up.
Yeah, it might be because, you know, he's getting pressure from his friends. So yeah, I went to Prince Edward. I finished them. I got a very different exposure from Prince Edward. I got a lot more confidence in who I was, because there I could air my views. I got, you know, it was more real for me. So, you know, the best, so I'm both a dragon, at St. George's they call them dragons, and a tiger. Okay. So, you know, I'm a dragon and a tiger together, which I think is an amazing combination, because even up until now, business-wise, I do business with the dragons and I do business with the tigers. So it's also increased my net worth in terms of relations. So basically that's about George and his upbringing. And yeah, up to school level. Okay,
fantastic. So I want to get into the family side of things. I see you doing some motivational videos with your kids in the car every morning. You know, give these talks, and they have inspired most of us also to say, look, it's better to be a better dad. You know, and I see the relationship that you have with your father also very, very cool. Mdar, big up. You did well on this one. And I've had a chance also to interact with your brother, Ignatius. I'm absolutely amazing individual, but very more soft than you.
Yeah. The last born got that. Out of all my siblings.
No, you mean the last born is the naughtiest?
No. It's not called naughty. It's the more adventurous. I'm out of all of my sister Rodo, Ignatius, Linda. All of them are very soft spoken. Yeah. But George is the daring guy. Yeah. George is the only one who failed his O levels, George is the only one who didn't graduate with anything.
Yeah.
And George is that guy who, he
And
will
yet
make
your
a
brother
plan.
Ignatius is such an educationist, actually.
No, he is, and I mean,
like-
it's important.
Chief, you see, this is what you do for your child, okay?
And I love his program because he's trying to now get people not to just get educated old school. He's trying to now get people at a young age to know what they want to do.
To customize.
Because the educational system currently, with all parents watching, is not what it is. Nothing has changed since 1980 up until now. Of course, yeah, we've got some science labs built up, a couple of subjects added. But when we look at our kids, when we take them to university, to first world countries, you'll see they are lacking. They are still undecided whether they should be a lawyer, architect, doctor, MBA student, law, etc. But these other kids from other countries, from Form 1, they knew I want to be a pilot. They knew I want to be, and they focused on that. So that's what my brother's doing, and it's more tailor-made, focused education, which is very beneficial to
He speaks a great deal. You need to check him out. He's absolutely amazing. We're going to share his details with you on our platforms on social media, so you can get to understand who Ignatius is. Also, again, maybe we can get him on the show anyway. Maybe we'll talk to George. He's going to talk to him. But I want to get into the family life of George.
Yeah.
We've seen you around your children. We've seen you posting proudly about your wife, which is very rare for us young guys. We don't want to be out there proudly with our situations at home.
Yeah.
We always want to look good out there, but people must know George Billionaire was obvious. But my game, but I wanna talk about that from a young global entrepreneur who has tasted success and has always seen defeat and failure.
Yeah.
How has that journey been for you with the family?
So my greatest role model when it comes to life is my parents. So when you have parents who modeled out what marriage should be like, it's a lot easier to then bring that out of you. My dad was never I told you to do this, so do it. My dad was I will show you what I want you to do. This is how you change a wheel. I would see my dad opening the bonnet, taking a toothbrush and washing the Peugeot 404 thoroughly with a toothbrush.
Which one? The city council one or the
No, that was
this
his
is the
personal
one?
one. Yeah, personal one. Yeah, he had a 404, then a 544, and then those. Nah, but that was then. Then some stuff happened.
No, but I told pizza.
No, I mean back.
My
My dad was a legend.
Yeah.
I mean, is a legend.
Yeah.
He is still there, and I now, because I have 5 kids, and I have to pay kids for those fees for those kids.
Yeah.
I don't know how he did it on a job, working for City of Harare, because he had 4, I have 5. So imagine 5 kids all wanting to go to top schools, and the fees that currently are at private schools. It's a bit tough, but the way my father did this for us, because his father made a promise to him to say, listen, I'm taking you to good schools. This thing I'm doing for you, I want you to understand that education is key. So, there were people who would laugh at my dad. But you're taking your kids. Why don't you go uptown? Because he could have relocated from Glenora, working at the City of Harare, and gone up there. But he chose to sacrifice and take us off. So my father and mother, exemplarily, I would never remember a day I would hear my mom and dad fight. I don't actually remember it. And remember, it's a small house. 250
I was
square
about to
meters
say that.
in Glenora. So I don't remember a time where I'd actually had confrontations with my dad and mom.
Does this mean they didn't have them? Or?
So I think there was wisdom in how they had them. Because it's a small house. Maybe they'll take a drive or something, and then whenever we're around... I don't know.
You never know,
but up until now, I don't recall a time growing up where I actually heard all the years an alteration between my dad and my mom.
Wow.
So the support structure of my parents, my mom is late. She passed away in 2004. But I remember a very supportive mother. My mother was a social worker. She was at a nursery school in Glenora and Highfield. And I remember how supportive she was to me at those little sports days, at the Christmas plays.
Yeah.
So they modeled it out. My dad was busy with the city council, but he always made time. Not at high school, because he was busy with work. Now, my father heard that your son plays soccer. You know, he might have come to see me once or twice and then be like, oh, really? He's good at this. But because of the busy schedule, he didn't have as much time as now us entrepreneurs because he was on the job.
Manage your own time. Yeah.
So you see my school run diaries with the kids. I used to have that in a way with my dad. It's just that there was no phone. So the drive to school was always real talk, dad talking to son. And my negotiation skills up until now, my dad will take me to Mbare Msiga to buy a bag of potatoes. And he would negotiate from $10. He'll get the price, then he'll walk away. Then the guy will say, no, mune mari. $7. And then he would get it for a bargain because he would tell me that's the walk-away technique. And then you learn, oh, that's how you negotiate. So even when you see my interactions with people now, there are things that I was never told, but I saw my dad doing. I saw my mom doing. So because of that, and you know, thank God I found an amazing wife by the name Lisa. Shout out to shout out to Lisa.
Yeah.
You know, behind every successful man, and all successful men will tell you this.
Yeah.
You need a very patient, supportive wife who understands you, especially through your struggles.
Yeah.
Because I am who I am now, right? But there was another George who, if you look 15 years back, was a guy who had a dream, who had just graduated from the University of Zimex Mall, where others mocked that place, but that place groomed. Others were going to university, Harvard, all this, getting all this, which is great. But then you need a woman who supports you from where you are. And you know, thank God I found that in her. She's been my wife for the past 14 years.
Wow.
And we've been together for 20 years. So it's great to find somebody who you find early in life, who knows you, who settles with you, who then, you know, helps you to follow and chase your dreams. And why I'm proudly out there to, you know, post my family and my life is because I'm happy with what God blessed me with, because it's great to, especially in this day and age, you know, you never know what tomorrow holds. And I believe in making memories daily. So all those school run diaries, as we've been doing those ever since the twins, who are now in Form 3 in grade 1. So we have videos from the first day of school. And we started doing those videos. So sometimes we look back over the holidays and we're like, wow, that's when you were grade 1. And it's good. It's a good legacy for them. Because they have access to them on YouTube. They have access to them, all of those. So every single day, which is a school run day, where I am in the country, or possibly if I'm not, they will do it by themselves and share the video to me, and I will post it wherever I am. And it's great to see that all the things that they've spoken about, similar to what my dad used to tell me, he always used to tell me, in life, no matter what happens, you have to speak what you want to see before it happens, because you have to be the first believer of oneself in order for you to be great. So, like I said, my parents were an amazing role model. All I do is not created, it's what I grew up seeing. So all this posting, my mother, so when there were visitors at my house, my mother would send me to Glenora Park to go and get the cameraman at all occasions. Wow. So I would know, you would have, and we had pictures up until now. There's no relative of mine I don't know, because they are there pictorially. There's, oh, that's Sekuru Masaira, that's Sekuru Maunga, that's my brother, that's my... So whenever they come, you'll be like, Sekuru Chief,
we know you.
And they'll be like, anyway, that guy was young, how does he know me? Because you were replayed all of this. So when you see all these pictures and memories I make with family, whether at home, at sport, on holiday, all of those are capturing moments which, you know, a picture is the best way to capture, you know, a memory. So that's something that I grew up seeing and something that I've adopted in the family. And that's what keeps us going.
Fantastic. We are talking to George, billionaire. We're going to be back in a bit. to continue this conversation. But yeah, we want to find out more about the business side of George and how he actually graduated from the University of Zimex Mall.
The Chief Koti Show.
So folks, we are talking to George Billionaire, and of course we are trying to find out who he is and everything that he's done growing up and up to where he is now in his life. So you were sharing a little bit about that, those memories when you were growing up. Fantastic to have had the chance to be with your dad and your mom both in one place. I didn't have that luxury, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I wish things had turned differently. And also, it also affects you in life, you know. So I think it's a very good way of modeling things, and make sure that you stay with Lisa. Whatever you do, be good to her. Divorce is not a good thing.
Yeah.
I've gone through that myself, and it has affected my relationship with my kids, because period so when you miss out on that as well, until you then come back to try and understand each other. And there's a new partner also who has, by the way, been very great, Shuvai, amazing. But there's that element where, I look at you and I envy you, man. I'm like, wow, those school run diaries, I wish I had the opportunity to do them,
Yeah.
But moving on to the business, to the business route, how did that start?
Okay, so George began his very first business empowered by my dad and my mom in grade 6, Kuglenora.
Wow.
I always used to ask for money. So over the school holidays, like now, my mom said, listen, bus stop up. Zupco was very mobile those days.
Yeah, and very reliable.
Yes. So once people get out of the bus, they're hot from the bus, because the buses were not air conditioned like the buses now.
Yeah.
So people would come out, they're hot, and the first thing they want is something to cool off. And my mom said, here, freeze it, $10 for a packet of 50. If you sell these, you now have double the amount of money. Reinvest that, and instead of sitting down playing soccer all day, set up a time where you sell those freezers. So my very first hustle was empowered by my dad and my mom.
Wow. So they gave you the
freezers.
start for that business.
So the thing with selling freezers, it broke me, because zvinonyadzisa kutengesa mafreezer. Totinzi George, come salad, I know George is chi. But for me, because I wanted money, I did it. And from the first pack, I got 20, I got 4 packs, I got 40. Then I started selling freezers, Nema put Kurutamba Bora and stuff, and it did something to me. So selling freezers is dying to self and offering a product and a service to somebody. And in return, because you're at least offering something, people can exchange what you're selling for money. So that was the first hustle. So at a very early age, I became a hustler. I could sell anything. I would see ladies in the neighborhood who needed pegs, and I knew town because I go through town. I would hustle and sell those things. So I became very enterprising at a young age. So after I finished my education at Prince Edward, my very first job was in an internet cafe. I was one of those guys who would
explain what an internet cafe is, because this generation won't
doesn't
understand.
So I was one of those guys who, when you wanted to open an email address, back then there was Hotmail, there was Yahoo, there was High Five. I was one of those guys who would say, come in, what's your name? Or Chief Koti at hotmail.com, and help you put your password and show you how to do this.
What was your first email? What is it called?
George7zw@yahoo.com.
Mine was chiefstyles21 at yahoo.co.uk.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So my stint at
the internet cafe
was for 3 months.
Yeah.
And then staff was changed, and then that's why I also love music. So I also used to copyright music from overseas. No, in the internet cafe, you'd select and I'd create a playlist for people. Then they would come, and then so I did that at the internet cafe. Then I opened a little joint in Glenora where I would burn CDs for people, and in the neighborhood it was called Big Baller Burners. So people who wanted music would know that, let's go to George. Big baller burners. George, you got
to think for names, yeah?
No, you gotta have that little that.
Okay.
So that was that. And then I went to work at my best friend's mother. So my best friend, Tatenda Madzingira, we failed our all levels together because of soccer. So his dad, Sunday Marimo, was the coach of the national team. Yeah, that's right. So because of soccer, we became very closely knit. So there are times I used to go and stay at their houses over the holidays and study. So one other key person who helped me, break out and understand entrepreneurship is Constance Marimo. That's where my second job was, at Wallace Boutique, right? So I went to work at Wallace Boutique. It's a clothing shop for women because of my best friend. She was like, you don't have anything to do? Go and work at the shop, do stock take, do the sales in there and everything. So after that, I worked at the candy shop. I worked for Danford Giro.
Let me take you to the candy shop.
That's right. Candy shop. That's right. That's where I worked for Danford Giro. You know Danford?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I worked for Danny for about a year. Right, worked with Danny, and that was at Zimex Mall.
Yeah.
And so I was working in the shop, but I was also
You had an eye outside.
I had an eye outside because
That's where the action was.
I had a gift to be able to, and back then there were phones in people's shops, but they didn't have customers. But I had the network, so I would say, give me all your phones, give me this, that. Then I would go to the banks and say, listen, these are the phones I have.
My 3310,
My 33, 34, my 9300, 6600, all of those.
Yeah.
So I know all of those, and I used to sell those to corporate because George was well spoken. He could know how to, because of the exposure of those private schools. Make people, and I would sell most of those things, even though I was working in the candy shop. And then something in me was like, I need to go corporate because with all this, I had hustled, I had made some good money. And in fact, before I went corporate, at Zimex Mall, I then decided Glenora, where I used to stay, because I worked at an internet cafe, there was a lack of phones back in Glenora, right? So I thought, let me build a phone shop right by the corner, right at the corner. So I got some money, all my phones, liquidated them, bought bricks, and I built a phone shop. A week before we opened the phone shop, everything was done. Operation Muramba Trina came. And imagine, my dad from City Council told me not to do this. But
because he knew what was coming.
Because George was like, no, but look, everybody in the neighborhood is building up illegal structures. Dad, this has nothing to do with your name. This is me. Let me just do whatever I'm doing. And then I did that. And just as we opened, that was that. It was demolished. And that was a lesson for me that if ever you want to do something in the city or the country of Zimbabwe, make sure it's properly documented. Because if not, they'll come and demolish that thing. At that time, I got a realization to say, I need to go back into corporate world. Because I couldn't go back to hustling again. Because I thought, you know what, I need to go career path now to see I'm a good salesman. Let me go and help sell. But wherever I used to go, they used to ask for my qualifications. And the last qualification I had was my A levels. Nothing else. I tried to do IMM, never then finished it because I got a whiff of Zimex Mall and I started hustling. The money was, once you taste the money, the education, you start to think. But then when that was demolished, I got I need to go back. So then I started looking for a job. And I remember at church, at Celebration Church, there was an opening for the youth cross culture. There was an opening there. And I remember it was Alan Mawarire at Belgravia Service Center. I went there. I worked for a stint. I think it was about 6 months. And I was released from work a bit awfully because, something happened and there was a friend who came back and George had to be released because they couldn't have so many people. Then I went to work for my brother, Ignatius Munengwa, at the Paint People, family business, selling paint. So I sold paint for a good 2-3 years of my life. And I know, if I see paint, I know paint, automotive, decorative. I got to network with a lot of people, the paint industry and all of that. And, it was good times. Of course, in family businesses, you really don't get to strive as much as you want. But the opportunity and exposure I got was amazing.
Immense,
Right. After that, I then went to, I left there. I wanted greater horizons. I went to work at my stepmother's brother's workplace. another air conditioning company by the name Optional Air. I worked there for about a year, 6 months, and great exposure. So, I give a lot of credit to my former boss, Fungai Mwale from Optional Air. I mean, most of the things that I've learned,
You've learned in the air conditioning business, yeah.
I look back and I see, similar to how I started, is how he started. And he's one person who has empowered a lot of young people out there to actually go on their own journeys. So after that stint, I was earning about $300 with commissions. And I then decided, I remember there's a man of God called Pastor Victor Kabasha. He had this business networking forum every Mondays. And, there were great business people talking. And they said, you know what, their stories, they broke out of where they were working from. Nigel came to speak, Nigel Chanakira, Prophet Angel, all these big people came to speak. And that provoked me. And he said, you know what, there's a bigger life for you. And you should start something of your own. And at that time, I didn't know it was air conditioning. But the one person who made me get into air conditioning, I'll never forget, there's a lady in Chisipiti whose bedroom was hot. It was sun-facing. It was upstairs. And when we finished installing that aircon, out of all the things I've ever sold, cars, phones, paint, all of this, I had never seen somebody so satisfied by a service I had offered than that. And that's an aha moment for me.
Yeah.
She was like, you don't know what you've done. I could never sleep up here. I always used to sleep downstairs. So for me, that was that specific Mrs. Witira from Chisipiti. She in some way directed the path that I then decided to take after, that mentorship with Pastor Victor and all those people. I decided to jump off because I had twins at that time in 2010, and things were hectic. $300. You would wonder, where did the Pampers go? Where did the powder milk go? Because it wasn't Eddie. You have 300, you have rent to pay, you have a lot, and it wasn't Eddie now. So I said to myself, you know what, let me jump and go the route less traveled. And that's when we jumped in 2012. On the 1st of April, we began Pro Air with a lot of disbelief of people. People thought, no, stay where you are. And, shout out to my dad, Nicodemus, who remember, helped me to start that freezer business. But when I wanted to go on to the journey with entrepreneurship, because of his fear about entrepreneurship, because he worked for the city council for 35 years, he was very fearful of me beginning. And he had dreams of, George, I see you in tattered clothes, and you're coming to stay with your wife at my house. Stay where you're getting 300 at least.
And
but
manage.
a lot of people, friends, so many people said a lot. But that's when we began the journey in 2012 with Pro Air. And it's been an amazing journey. A lot of lessons, a lot of things learned. Now Pro Air is one of the household leading names in the country. But that's been a sum total result of sheer determination, going against people's opinions. A lot of people said it wouldn't work. I would come to Chief Koti's house, my good friend, and see an aircon from somebody else and wonder, but bro, I do this. But because Chief Koti didn't believe in George, but God has an amazing way of causing people who are supposed to be financiers of your business to come. And most of the time, they're not your friends. He will cause those people to believe in you. Only when you're getting awards, only when you're being recognized. Then Chief is like, George, that's my boy. I grew up with him. That's my man. But at the beginning, they didn't believe in you. So, to everybody out there, there's so many things that can hinder you. I always say, before you become great, there's a thing called fear. And behind the doors of your greatest fears lie your greatest treasures. So when you're very close to something, someone as close as my dad was meant to come and hinder me from becoming what I could have been. So had I listened to my dad and remained on a job, I would have remained just over broke and have never been the person that I am today. I've received multiple awards
Yeah.
Multiple recognition.
We see you.
And you know, I remember a time, the first 2 awards I invited my dad. He's like, "Do you buy these things, or why are they?" And it's amazing how, you know, there's a time when we went to awards and there was the highest representative of the land, and they went and they shook hands with the president. And my dad was like, "Son, it's amazing how all these people." It's a good thing you didn't listen to what I said. Because I think maybe but it's good you stuck to your gut.
Yeah.
You followed what you wanted to do. You were labeled crazy. You were labeled you're going to become broke. There's no one in the Munengwa family who's ever run a successful business and this and that. So many friends said so many things. But because of sheer gut determination and belief,
you made it.
Nothing is impossible to he who believes.
So, one of my last questions to you would be, you spoke about Lisa. Where is she in this picture when you're now making this decision and you still have these twins?
Yeah.
And still you are saying, I'm abandoning ship. I'm going to start afresh.
Yeah.
What was your reaction?
You know, I'm very grateful to have a very supportive person I call my wife, who has really been through the most. And, you know, I remember back in the day when we didn't have a car, we had to take commuters to work. She used to work at a bank back then. I used to work there. Our combined salary was about 550 between the two of us. It was not adding up. Rent was 450. It was crazy. But then it's good to have a supportive person who you then call your wife, who understands you, not where you are. It's different marrying somebody now because they see money, they see financial stability. But there's nobody who will go through the most with you than somebody who's known you from the guy who we had a mountain bike, we had nothing, would go into ETs together, you understand each other. You know, so it's you know, I'm very grateful to God that I found somebody who is understanding. And you know, also when you're marrying, it's good to also see the parents of the person you're marrying, because with her family, I've seen her mother, I've seen the values that she's grown up under. You know, it's important because your wife will always mirror her mother, and when you see that, so I saw that in her, and I saw, you know, most men marry a woman similar to the mother that raised them. And I saw a lot of that, especially with me wanting a big family from the onset.
Yeah.
You know,
so you knew you always wanted a lot of kids.
Yes, always. It was something that I've always wanted. Initially I wanted to have 7 kids, as much as, you know, people may say it's a bit much, but I think with 5, you know. I've always believed having kids is not about your personal provision. I believe that every child comes with their own blessing. Every child comes with their own resources. As long as you're a focused man, imagine families back then in the rural areas would have 12 kids, right? But all of them would be taken care of. So God has an amazing way of taking care of these kids. Because if you see the gifts that these kids have, all of them have different gifts. This one's a great swimmer, basketball player, cricket player, hockey player, great
But I think when
musician.
you're old and you're sitting there and you're watching them, or they, you know, you were these moments as a family. I think that's a proud moment. I see from my mom. We didn't have too many. We're just 4, and so far I'm on 4 also. Well, 5. But you know, it's an interesting time whenever we are around with our children. And now their children, my sister's children have children, and you know, it's a nice Christmas always.
It is.
To have that kind of family. But as I let you go, George, your nuggets, maybe 1 or 2, to a person who is in that phase that you were in when you were almost graduating from the University of Zimexmo, you know, the space that you have been in as a young father, as a young entrepreneur who had things very tight. And the economy right now is absolutely incredulous. In fact, globally, things are very tough generally for you to do things.
You know, I would say that in all things we do, we must always put God first, right? So when I say that, the person who created you and I, it was your mother and father, yes. But the core person who sent Chief Koti and George Billionaire on this planet, especially in this season, was God. So I always go back to the fact that, biologically speaking, if we were to look at how your father and mother met and how, those things ran a race and went and conquered, they won a race. So you were born a winner. So everybody on this planet who's watching this is not on earth by accident. You're here for a key specific purpose and mandate. And there's a thing called a process. So all I've said today is, George, growing up, you'd feel underprivileged. People will laugh at you. You get dropped off at the gate. You failed your O levels. You worked at the internet cafe. You went through so much. But all of that uncomfortable place was all preparation for George when he begins his own journey. So that George will understand when he's up at the top, he went through the process. So with people out there, you must go through the process. We know the story of Joseph in the Bible. He went through a horrible process. And that process is what people don't like. So you must go to work. You must go through times where you feel things are harsh. But there's nobody else you can blame on this planet except yourself for not excelling and succeeding. Most people become comfortable with this norm. They become comfortable with a salary. And this is my message to many people, that similar to my story and most of the key people that you will interview, you'll find that the only thing that made people change is because they got uncomfortable being comfortable. They wanted a better life. They got exposed like I did when I went to my friend's house. I saw the nice life. I wanted it. So there's nothing on this planet you cannot not have unless you desire it. So you must have a constant belief that, listen, I may be where I am today, but I don't want to remain where I'm at. And it begins with being uncomfortable, believing that God has a plan for everybody. For me, I love the Proverbs 3 verse 5 up to 10, which says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Acknowledge God in all your ways, and through all these hardships, economic turmoils, being fired, divorcing, going through all this, there is light at the end of the tunnel to he who trusts and believes that there's a better life for me. So to everybody out there, I may have grown up in a poor place, but where I grew up doesn't determine where I end up. The only person responsible for where you and I end up is nobody else but you. And it begins with that shared determination to say, I want a better life and a better future, not for me, but for my kids and for generations to come.
Fantastic, George. I want to thank you so much for making time. May the good Lord continue to increase your territory. We want to see Pro Air getting bigger and bigger. And I know you are diversifying as we speak. May they find favor and be amazing. And of course, I do know that we are going to meet somewhere at the top. I don't really like the bottom. It's very, very crowded. So please just keep winning and stay doing what you're doing. My man, thank you so much.
Sure. God bless everybody. And please make sure you subscribe to this amazing channel to see more content of many entrepreneurs. Because remember, success leaves clues. And if you keep watching this program, I can guarantee you your mindset will be transformed and you will be a different person.
Speaking beyond our borders, on land, on the seas and in the air. That was the Chief Koti Show.